Yes, hello everyone. How's it going? What's the crack? My name is Michael, and welcome back to a brand new episode of the Mick podcast. And it's another guest episode, and it's one that I'm very excited about. I believe this is probably the biggest guest that I've had on the podcast. So I'm delighted to welcome Chris Medland. He's an esteemed broadcaster, journalist, and probably everyone's number one source on Twitter for Formula One news. So, Chris, thank you so much for your time and for coming on the podcast.
That's all right. Thank you very much for having me. I'm sorry that I'm the biggest one so far. Hopefully there's bigger and better things ahead for you.
Well, I'm delighted to have you. And as I said, thank you for your time, because I know you're extremely busy. I mean, just last week you were in the States and what seemed like a 24-hour round trip to Italy on Monday. How was your trip to the States, and how was the Rolex event?
Yeah, I did Daytona and got out there on the Tuesday, I think it was, before the race. Worked the Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Which was good, productive. I was doing some podcasting myself, actually, at that. I was doing some writing for Racer, the website and magazine I work for, and a podcast series I do with Motorsport magazine called My Big Break. So I interviewed Elio Castroneves and Kamui Kobayashi for that, which was really cool. Got those done by Friday. Had hoped to get a few more drivers, but they were busy, and some of them are a bit like F1, like really tough to pin down, like Jimmy Johnson, very tough to get hold of, Scott Dixon as well. So yeah, did those, and then from Saturday was there as a fan, just watched the race as a fan Saturday, Sunday with my better half who was in tow, and she was doing some meetings. She also works in motorsport, and once they were out the way, yeah, we enjoyed the race as a fan, and then headed to Tampa for my birthday for a couple of days to extend it. So at least that trip was a full week. And it was freezing Saturday, Sunday. They had proper Arctic blast. So it was with wind chill, I think it was -5, which isn't what I'd sold a trip to Florida as.
Definitely not.
No, but yeah, it was really good fun. And then, yeah, you're right. I got back from that on the Wednesday morning, and then the start of this week went to Maranello for 24 hours just to record another podcast for Ionos, who are a sponsor for Haas. And I was with one of the Haas engineers, Ben Agathangelou, whose name is not easy to say. So yeah, that was another short trip.
Well, you're bound to be going podcast on the brain. I mean, it seems to be all you're doing at the minute, really.
Oh, well, yeah, I do a lot.
Obvious, apart from the writing and stuff as well.
Yeah, so my main kind of body of work has always been writing. I used to work for ESPN, then I worked for Crash.net, and then I worked for F1i. I helped launch that website in English, and then I've been freelance since the end of 2016. And yeah, writing was my main thing, but slowly got to do bits of broadcast work, and it sort of grew and grew. And then podcasting was something that I'd not actually done too much of. I'd appeared on the odd one, but not done a huge amount. Yeah. And then in lockdown, of course, everyone was setting them up. And I'd had some friends say that I should be doing an F1 one anyway. So I was like, why not? Got the time now. And use that time to kind of, I guess, learn it a bit more. And yeah, now I do a fun one called The Pad Hoc with two mates that work in F1, Lawrence Barretto and Nate Saunders. And then, I host one for Ionos, which is with the Haas team. And it's kind of like an introduction to F1 for anyone who's not really that familiar with it, but it's using that partnership to talk about things that kind of cross over from F1 to the world of cloud computing and storage and that partnership. And then, the Motorsport Magazine podcast as well. So, it's suddenly out of nowhere. I do loads of them, which is it's good fun. I really enjoy it.
Yeah, you stole most of my bit there. I was going to go through your career, but you've listed it off.
Sorry, mate.
No, pretty brilliantly there. I think the first thing I was able to read up on, or as far back as could get, was a TV logger for the BBC in the second half of the 2009 season. Is that right?
It is. Yeah, it certainly is. Well, actually, I could go back a little bit further than that, but it kind of crossed over. So I was at uni. So I think, did you say you're doing sports journalism at uni?
Yep.
Yeah, so I did the same degree, but I did it at the University of Central Lancashire in Preston. And I was there from, it would have been 2007 till 2010. And at the end of my first year, so summer of 2008, I'd pestered the kind of chief media officer at the British Grand Prix and said to him that, can I come and shadow you during a race weekend? I want to come and see what happens. I'm hoping to be a Formula One journalist in future. And it would really help me to know what your job is like and what I can expect as a journalist, but what you can and can't do and how you can help. And, just kind of understand how the whole system works, really. And he gave me a call back. There's a really nice guy called John Horton, who sadly passed away a few years ago. And he gave me a call back and said, look, you can come and work for me if you want, but you can't follow me around like a dog, like whatever this shadowing is. Like, you can just come and earn your keep. So it was meant to be unpaid. He did actually. It was very kind that he paid me at the end of the week, but I didn't know that until he paid me. And it was just to get experience of an F1 weekend at the media centre and how it works. So I did that in 2008. And at the same time that summer, did the Beijing Olympics for the BBC as a TV logger, which was casual work. that I just applied for. My course leader, a guy called Charlie Lambert, had told everyone to apply basically on the course. So like, look, these great opportunities for students that you could do it for TV, for radio, or online. And I think there's like 30 of us on the course. And I think about 4 of us actually completed the application because it was so long. Most people just lost interest, which was kind of poor form, but at the same time, it showed how long it was. And I planned on doing all of them. And in the end, I think I only applied for TV and radio and got the TV job. So yeah, I did TV logging, and the producer that was running that was someone called Belinda Moore, who's actually the wife of Brian Moore, the former England rugby player and BBC commentator who just retired. I say retired, stopped doing commentary for the BBC. And Bells was the MotoGP producer as well previously, and she was maybe going to be involved in F1 coming in 2009. That had been like announced that the BBC were getting those rights back. So her and I got talking, and in the end, she wasn't working on that production, but she put my name forward as someone who could help out. So yeah, the second half of 2009 season, I split with another logger that had done the Olympics, and I got to basically sit in a dark room in Television Centre in London. And essentially, if no one knows what logging is, you're just putting into a program exactly what's being seen on screen at that one time. So it's essentially making notes of the broadcast. So it would be, a wide shot of Lewis Hamilton walking down the paddock, or then a close up of Felipe Massa putting on his helmet, or just even when it was just general track action, you like wide shot on these drivers, and a lot of it was button clicking. It was kind of created. The system was very well set up, so you could do it as quickly as possible. And it means anyone who needed to edit a highlights package or look for any sort of footage in the future could search for keywords and certain shots would appear. So it was quite a basic job, but a really cool one because I still got paid to watch F1. So yeah, that was the start.
You mentioned that summer at Silverstone in 08. I went for a bit of a deep dive through your Instagram. I think you said you were a photographer's marshal. Is that right? How was that? And sort of just guiding people and telling them what to do and where they can and can't stand.
Very good digging, by the way. Yeah, I remember I put a picture of that up a few years ago, but it was so. I was like I don't even know what the exact job title was, but I was basically like an assistant in the media center, but that involved looking after journalists and photographers and whatever they needed. So actually on the first day I was there, I cleaned out the photographers' lockers, which hadn't been opened since the year before, which was lovely. So I had to clean them out and move them around. Yeah. But when it came to the race, it's almost like a bit of a reward, actually. There was a platform above a bridge that crossed the start-finish line. So it was when at Silverstone, the old start-finish line was kind of out of woodcut, and what they now use for like MotoGP, but we've obviously moved to down towards Abbey and Club for Formula One. So it's before the wing, and there was a bridge over the start-finish line there to link the paddock to the kind of car parks and the fan zone on the outside. So fans could move along it, and photographers could go on this platform above it. So you had to marshal that because there was a limit to how many people could be up there. Yeah, all photographers wanted to be up there for this great top-down start line shot, but if they were all up there, it would collapse. And similarly, you had to stop fans getting up there thinking, "Oh, this ladder looks fun, I'll climb this." So there were 2 of us stationed up there from the media services team. Just essentially, I was told it was a bit of a perk because they sold it as like a boring job, but they were also like, "But you got a great view for the race." Yeah. And it obviously 2008 rained heavily the whole time, but I had an incredible view. So just had to keep an eye on numbers, and it was very simple. Most of the photographers already knew that there was a limit on numbers, and they have their own plans about where they want to be and when during a race. Okay. So before the start, once it got to, I think it'd say 10, anyone else who showed up, they'd say, "Sorry, light is full," and then once the start was out the way, actually pretty much all of them disappeared, and you'd have like 2 or 3 up there at one time. So it was very simple in terms of just making sure that number was never exceeded. And then at the finish, I guess it got up near 10 again, but I don't remember it exceeding that either. So I just kind of stood and watched the race from there the whole time. Couldn't see a screen, didn't know what else was going on. No. Someone else had a radio and could kind of feed it back to us, but all I was being able to judge it on was the crowd noise and who came by when. So it was an awesome place to be.
So you went from there to the BBC, as you said, an assistant editor at ESPN, and then Crash.net, F1i, to where you are now. You're doing seemingly everything. You're with NBC, you're with Racer, you're all over the show, and you're Twitter's number one man, as some people have described it. That's some journey, and you've done quite a bit. Sort of tell us a bit about what you've did, what you're doing now, and how the world of journalism has sort of changed, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, because it has actually quite a lot. It's a funny one that sometimes people ask that sort of question, and you're like, well, not really. It hasn't. But in Formula One, it did. In terms of, I started off with ESPN on their F1 website as the assistant editor, and there was only two of us that worked full time. So there was the main. He was, I think his title was deputy editor, but for all intents and purposes, he was the editor, a guy called Lawrence Evanson, who's still there, really good journalist, and then myself as the number two. And at that point, the FIA didn't really accredit websites. They accredited magazines and newspapers, but the internet they still were wary of. And Bernie Ecclestone didn't understand how he's going to monetize the internet. So he just was keeping people out. So we found it really hard to go to races. So you're covering it remotely and feeling like outsiders, even though ESPN's a huge brand. Yeah. And within the context of ESPN, Formula One was actually quite small back then. You know, it was nothing compared to the NBA or NFL or baseball, anything like that. So that was before the growth we've seen in the US as well recently. So we weren't getting to many races, and we were working online, but just trying to cover the sport as well as we could, but with limited access. And one of the things that I learned there was kind of writing for the internet. I'd learned it a bit during an internship at Bauer Media, mainly working on FHM and the website there. And you kind of get an idea of what you need to do, how you need to structure an article, SEO, how you're going to make people see the work and it's going to rank well on Google, that sort of thing. But getting that balance then with ESPN was very important, was getting the balance between making a headline enticing or an intro kind of exciting and hit SEO boxes without it being clickbaity or unfair. So got a good balance from that. Moved on to Crash in 2014 because ESPN were going to more races then, but they couldn't send both of us, and Lawrence was going to more. So I think I went to about 8 races in total while working there, and quite a few tests. And then Crash approached me to say, look, will you be our F1 editor? You'll be going to every race, and we want you to kind of improve the standing of the website, which was good fun to do. And I learned a lot. I got to travel a lot, got to really start creating contacts then. And that's when I'd say journalism for me was changing, because I was getting to learn things and break stories and be in it. And that was something I certainly learned, that even though I was working for a big platform previously, not having access to people and to really verify things and learn things was holding me back. So I managed to do that in 2014, did a whole year of that, going to every race, every test, every time something happened to do with Formula One, I went there. And then F1i basically approached me to do the same thing, as they were a big F1 website in France, but they didn't have an English language version. Yeah. And they thought they could be very big in English. They had a great domain name in F1i, and they were allowed to use it. Bernie Ecclestone had given them approval because it used to be the official F1 magazine and had changed hands. So yeah, I went there and launched that, and that was tough, but I learned a lot. I was the editor. I got to manage people. And that was where I had to tell people what I felt were like the rules of journalism, what you could and couldn't say, whether you needed to source things more than once. You couldn't just copy stuff from other websites and not credit them, all that sort of stuff. And yeah, I felt like I was teaching some morals, I think, to some journalists, but that was also fun. And by this point, websites were fully embraced by Formula One. They wanted them there. They wanted the coverage, and it started to grow very quickly. So yeah, I did that for 2 years, and they didn't monetize that very well. So in the end, I went elsewhere when they wanted to basically go very clickbaity and run it on the cheap. And I appreciated why. That was how they were going to survive. But that's when I left and went freelance. And from that, I learned, again, being there is so important. Recently, COVID's meant it's not possible to go to every race, and with 23 races, I don't think I will go to every race ever again in a season. I'll do most, but not quite all. But yeah, back then I was going to every single race, every single test. Just, you were always able then to deal with people, talk to people, learn things. And probably the biggest thing I learned was just to be honest and authentic as a journalist. Like, obviously you want to know something, but also teams and personnel will use you to find stuff out from other people, to maybe get something out there they want to get out there, to why they might want to deal with you, but they have a reason for using you as such as well. And that's fine if they're being completely honest and upfront about it, but you can see through them, and it feels awkward to me when it's clear that people are trying to get something out of you or use you in a certain way. So I think, well, that's clearly the reverse is true when journalists are trying to find out information from teams. So the main thing is to always be yourself, be upfront, be fair, be a real true person. Don't be fake just to be nice to someone or anything like that. And that seems to go a long way, actually. So that's kind of helped me then. It meant I had good relationships in the sport, whether it was with teams or with other people that work in the media. And that led to quite a lot of work opening up as a freelancer. So I joined Racer in the end of 2016. And my first day with them was when Nico Rosberg retired in Austria. And at the time, I was actually working for both Race and F1i, just crossing over for a month. So that was a busy day. But it ended actually with getting to sort of party with Nico and his management team as they kind of celebrated the announcement. Yeah, so that was good fun. Really good fun.
Every cloud has a silver lining, I suppose.
Big time. So that was cool. And then went full-time freelance from there.
You've, as you've just said, you've made a career interviewing people, but for a while there, you were actually being interviewed, Drive to Survive, and your face was plastered all over the globe on Netflix. What was that experience like? First of all, being on the other side of the interviewing setup, and then for it to go so global as it did.
Yeah, it was strange because in terms of being the other side of the setup, was you were used to it because you were normally opposite, so you knew what you're getting into and you knew how it was going. What was odd was the more we did it, at first my role was very much to explain things, to let new fans know, or people that weren't even fans know how F1 worked, the very basics. They asked me describe a race weekend, and I gave my first answer was really in detail about just the excitement and the buzz and how it builds to a crescendo and all this stuff. And what I thought was a nice answer to kind of say how cool F1 is. And they're like, no, we mean really basic. Like, what happens Thursday? What would you call Thursday? I thought it was media day. And they're like, exactly. So we want to know Thursday's media day. Friday, we have practice. Saturday, we qualify. And they needed that kind of outline. So I realized then my role was just to explain a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And then later they start to, the producers and the creators of the show kind of were starting to understand F1 a bit more themselves and understand storylines and histories, and they start looking for particular things they want you to say to kind of fill in the gaps or weave things together, which then becomes a bit awkward because you do have a decision to make as a journalist between just saying what they want you to say and turning around at other times and say, well, I wouldn't say that, or that's not true. And I did the latter normally. I never said something that I didn't want to say. There was a few times they would then just edit it to make it sound like you did, just to fit, which was a bit annoying, but understandable. I mean, the show went huge, but at that point you didn't know it was going to go so big. It was, you were just helping out with a project that people were a bit skeptical about. Mercedes and Ferrari weren't part of it. And it was, will this work or won't it? And when it went so big, then it was very exciting. But for at the time when you were making it, you didn't realize. And it took a little while actually to notice. It was, I remember flying to Australia and having a lot of people having already said that they'd seen me a lot in the show and thought I'd done quite a good job, but having a lot of people within F1 being like, I know this guy, and sending me screenshots of me on the TV. And then your friends that you haven't spoken to in ages are going, what the hell are you doing on my TV? And you realize people that don't like F1 are watching it. So that's when I noticed how big it was going. And then more work comes your way, or you become more recognized. So that happened pretty quickly. But it was the strangest thing was the year before it came out, I'd done lots of filming with Netflix, just going to their studio they were using in London, or at races where we just do the interviews. And I'd done an appearance at the US Grand Prix in Austin with Jenny Gao from 5 Live, and the two of us had appeared in VIP kind of hospitality units on the Saturday and Sunday before qualifying and before the race, to kind of answer any questions, talk about what was going on, build some interest, and kind of add some value to people that were there. And more people knew Jenny than me at the first year that we did it, and they were quite excited to meet her. But even then, it was a very small number of people that were actually in the hospitality unit that paid any attention or asked any questions. Most people are just enjoying themselves, doing their own thing, looking out the window, chatting away, whatever they're doing, but then they're not bothered about what you have to say, which is absolutely fine. Our role wasn't there to entertain everyone. It was just, if they want to know something, we could tell them. And then the next year we did the exact same thing, and the difference was huge. I'd say the boxes were busier. The most people then wanted to listen and wanted to learn things or ask questions. And so many people recognized me or knew of me because of Netflix and were asking me questions or wanting photos and autographs and things. You're like, this is crazy. So that was when you really saw the difference and realized it had gone big. And I think I've done a great job of promoting the sport. It's been a really good step, I think, to put it in the public domain.
Yeah. It's fair to say you've traveled all over the world. I mean, Australia, America, wherever you name it, you've been there. If I was to put you on the spot and ask for your favorite track, the best one you've ever visited, where would it be?
That is genuinely really hard. People do this and I always cop out with a list of about 5. And it's, so Austin, I absolutely love. It's a great city. It's a good circuit. They really buy into the whole event. They create a good atmosphere there. and it feels kind of unique. So that's always one of the top ones. Melbourne is awesome, but that was always because it was the first race of the season, and you had that freshness and excitement and wanting to see what's going to happen. Like the racing wasn't always great on track, but again, really cool venue in the middle of a park in Albert Park, and to fly the other side of the world, to me that was like the dream. I used to wake up and watch F1, silly o'clock in the morning on the TV, and it seemed another world, and it was then. And to then actually be there and actually see it in person was so cool. But also, again, Melbourne's a really nice city, and that mix of a big sort of modern city and a beach surfside sort of vibe and the tracks in between the two. Yeah, that's very cool. So I always say that to people. Singapore's incredible as a venue, as a really cool street circuit under the lights, and a fun, vibrant city as well. Japan is just an incredible place, and Suzuka's an amazing track. And then Hungary for the one that's actually a bit more kind of reachable, I think, for people. So one I didn't realize as well. I was at ESPN. I got sent there. I did the Nürburgring and Hungary back to back in my third year with ESPN. And Lawrence, my boss, let me go and kind of said, you can do these two. And he thought he had the good deal of races, and that I was just getting. He was like, Germany doesn't look all that fun, the Nürburgring. And then he was like, and Budapest is always a boring race, and it looks a bit old and tired, the circuit. And I got there, and it's such a cool city, so much fun, really affordable, really great for fans to go to and spend a weekend at. And the tickets weren't too expensive either for fans. So that whole kind of package, I always say, actually, if you're looking to go to a European race, go to Budapest. So yeah, they're kind of the five that I always trot out. As iconic as somewhere like Spa is, I think that's all about just the racetrack. There's nothing else around it that kind of is so appealing. Same with somewhere like Monza. I mean, Milan's a nice place, but a lot of these are just great for the race itself. But when you want to put the whole package together, if you're spending a lot of money as a fan to go to a race, they're the kind of five that jump out at me and go, they're incredible. If you get to do them, definitely do them.
Yeah. It's something that I would love to do. I've never been to a race, but it's something that it's definitely on the bucket list. We'll not stay on it too long, but I would be killed if I didn't ask you about the past season and about Abu Dhabi. And I'm sure at this point you're sick to death of talking about it and going over it. So we'll keep it brief, but just quickly your thoughts on the season and obviously the scenes that unfolded in Abu Dhabi.
Yeah, no, it's all right. Actually, I haven't been asked about it for about a month now, which has been quite fun. Because you're right, over Christmas and New Year, that's all anyone wanted to talk about, and it's still, is an important topic that needs to be addressed, and the FIA says they are addressing it at the moment. The season itself, I thought, was incredible. It had its moments that were controversial or difficult, but still seemed largely fair. And we didn't need a finale to end that way to spice up what had been an amazing year. So it's such a shame that it did, and that now that's what we talk about when we should have been talking about the best season I think F1's maybe ever had. I hosted a podcast for Motorsport Magazine, like a season review, and the two writers on that said, yeah, it's the best one that they've ever watched, but then ruined by that final race. And I agree. I think that this, I mean, as we record this, I've seen there's radio transmission between Jonathan Wheatley and Michael Massey that's going around today from that final race that was out. So people are claiming that it's brand new and that it's unseen or unheard, and it is more damning for the FIA. And it's not brand new or unseen. It was, I think Formula One had put it up on their like radio review of the race 2 or 3 days later, something like that. So they hadn't hidden it away or anything, and people just hadn't picked up on it. But there's, to me, the thing I really struggle with is accusations that it was contrived in the sense that the FIA wanted Verstappen to win and Hamilton not to, or F1 wanted that. And I completely disagree with that. I think Massey completely screwed up. I think he got it wrong. I think he was trying to get it right. He was trying to create a racing situation to finish it, and have everyone go, wow, what a brilliant job you did. It didn't end on the safety car. It didn't end with us complaining about back markers ruining the championship. You created a situation where we got a racing finish. But in doing that, he created one that just meant there was only ever going to be one outcome. And I think he needed more time to actually think about the consequences of the actions that he was putting in place. But I absolutely disagree that he was doing it on purpose to help Max. In the sense that in the same race, you look at the first lap incident between the two when Lewis went off and stayed in the lead. And I fully believe that Lewis shouldn't have been allowed to stay ahead. And I think Massey got that wrong as well. Should have been in Max's position. So I think he made errors that were just, it was just making mistakes. But the final one was very bad. But Red Bull lobbying was exactly what Mercedes would have done in the opposite situation and had at different races. Other teams had done. And Massey wasn't reacting to their lobbying. They're just in his ear while he's trying to make a decision. Yeah. But that's just like it has been the whole time. And as Ross Brawn said, that needs to change, because the impression it gives is whatever decision you make, then it sounds like you've made it because someone asked you to do something. Yeah. But in reality, he's just made a decision that was the wrong one because he thought that was the best way that he could create this great, exciting finish. So yeah, I think it was the wrong decision. I think it was actually a terrible thing for F1, even though we're still talking about it now. I think that's for all the wrong reasons. We should be we should be thrilled that we're about to start a new season between these two guys and new regulations that should be so exciting. And instead, it's still got a really bitter taste and we're still focused on the past. So it's ruined, what was an epic season. I don't think Massey can keep his job. I think it's just, there's too much now negative sentiment towards what happened, that he needs either a new role or to leave the FI altogether. And in some senses, that's not, that almost seems harsh on him, because it could well come out that he was under direction from other people to say, whatever happens, finish this on the green flag, and it's not just his own decision. But at the end of the day, he does make the final call, and the current structure and the way he's worked over the year, I think there's just not enough faith in him now, and it would just cause so many problems and distractions during the season. Every time he makes a decision in future, people will question it. So, I think it's a situation that it still needs addressing and needs addressing quickly. I'll be really annoyed actually if they don't firmly say what they're doing this month. The plan is, I think a meeting on Monday should really move things forward. But the FIA did outline that then they would put together changes that would be implemented at the World Motorsport Council meeting, which is the weekend of the opening race. And that's too late. That can't happen. So they have to get it done this month. And it needs to be, they need to admit as well that they got it wrong. They can't go sifting through the rule book and find a way out that's a really grey area, because clearly that's not what they were applying. Otherwise, they'd have said it instantly after the race. So this is why Massey did this. This is why it's fine. Everyone be quiet. They didn't say that because that wasn't happening. So even if there is a get out, I think someone again on Reddit managed to piece together certain regulations that probably would get them out of, make it look like it was actually a legal way of finishing the race. But that's not what the FIA said they were doing. So they clearly weren't doing that. So they need to admit fault, because they pointed the finger at fans and media for misunderstanding, and teams, and that they were not misunderstanding at all. So big task for the new FIA president, but I think it's a good chance for him as well. If he gets this right and gets it right quickly enough, then we might be starting a new F1 season with kind of a bit of fresh impetus, which would be a good turnaround from where we finished the last one. Yeah,
I've two more questions about Formula One, and then we'll move quickly on because I know we're a bit short for time. First one, in a word, 2022, quick predictions, because I know again, I would be killed if I didn't ask.
I'm really struggling with them, actually, to be honest. I'm going to say frustrating, because I reckon we're going to have, frustrating would be the one word, based on, I think the rules will deliver what they're meant to in terms of closer racing. I think you'll be able to follow another car more closely, more easily. But I think they'll also deliver a bigger field spread because it's a new set of rules. So we won't get to see it that often.
Yeah.
So the potential will be there, but the actual action might not be. So I think that's what will be frustrating, because we know how good it can be then, but we're just not quite there yet. We need the teams to close up. And I just, as much as I want it and hope it, I think it's quite a big ask for both Red Bull and Mercedes to still be right at the sharp end, really closely matched. They might both be race-winning teams, but whether they can be as closely matched as they were last year is really unlikely, which might reduce the amount of battles we see between Hamilton and Verstappen again. And that's what everyone would love to see, is kind of, round two. And those two guys get an opportunity as well as others. Whereas I can see, one being a little bit clear of the other at most races and just losing that edge a bit. So I hope that doesn't happen, but I think that's how it might be for this first year. But the whole point is, this is the starting point, and it should get better from this year. So hopefully this is as bad as it is and still entertaining.
And finally, this is probably a question that nobody was going to expect me to ask, but why is, when there's a red flag, does the Daniel Ricciardo gif come out on Twitter?
So it's not Daniel Ricciardo, actually.
Oh, is it not?
No, it's Nate Saunders, who I do this podcast with from ESPN, and Rudy Van Buren, the McLaren esports driver.
Can't believe I got that so wrong.
It's all right. It's in low quality. I'll give you that. It's in very low quality. I'm trying to think if there's a Daniel one that I use. Don't think so. But there's so basically that was Nate got to do a hot lap with Rudy in I think it was 2018. Did 2018 or 2019 in Germany. And it must have been, I'm trying to remember now, it was Hockenheim. Anyway, whichever one it was, he got to this hot lap with Rudy and he gets to the car and he gets on quite well with Rudy. Rudy is really good fun to deal with, and I get on well with him as well. So he gets in and they're all filmed by Pirelli so that you can use this footage on your websites. And Nate gets in and goes to give him a handshake. And Rudy at that moment looks in the mirror to check he can pull out because they're saying to him, you can go, and he needs to make sure there's no cars coming down the pit straight. So misses him. And Nate's like, oh, never mind. And then looks at the camera and realizes that's just been filmed and I've been blanked. So he's like, oh. And McLaren said it was hilarious and that they'd get the footage and they sent it to us very quickly. So I managed to clip it up as a GIF. So basically it just means it's an epic failure. Yeah. So if there's a red flag, it's like, oh, it's gone wrong. So that's why that's used. And then from that point on, it meant that more and more times that Nate did funny things, I would try and turn it into a GIF and use it to represent what was going on. So it's just a bit of fun between mates that kind of blew up a bit. There are a few people that hate it because it just fills their feed, especially when it's testing or a practice session. You get lots of red flags,
or especially like, when you're
with it.
Scrolling through your Twitter media trying to find certain things. It's just GIF.
Yeah.
GIF. But
there was one time, I think, you get the 6 squares in the corner of your last 6 images that were all just Nate from one test. So I was like, oh, I'm really sorry, but it's here to stay until I get a better one, basically.
Yeah, fair enough. Now, I know we've only about 5 minutes left, but I just want to quickly ask you a few other things. Yeovil Town football, my only memories as a Man United fan of Yeovil is beating you 4-0 about 4 years ago and 2-0 about 7 years ago. So I'm sorry to bring that up, but talk to you a bit quickly about your, growing up supporting Yeovil.
So as you can see, we're going in the wrong direction based on those 2 results. We basically, I'm from Somerset, Yeovil, my local team. So I played for my very local team, a team called Yeovil Town that were 2 miles from my house. I lived in a little village. And then the nearest town was a town called Taunton, who I also follow, but they were lower than non-league sort of level. And it was hard to get to games there. But Yeovil was about 15 miles from my house, and I had one of my best friends from school. Him and his dad used to go to games. They had season tickets. So actually, through playing football for Ilminster, I went to a couple of games as part. We would train and then watch a match, and I was hooked. Watched a 0-0 draw when I was, about 9 or 10, and loved it. And was like, right, I want to watch more live football. So went to a few games, ended up getting a season ticket, and then you kind of hooked as a kid. So we had a good run as well. We went up into the championship at one stage. We'd never been out of non-league until, got to get this right, 2003. And then we managed to get ourselves into the championship in 2013. And a good story from that was we'd had a heck of a run. We'd got ourselves to Wembley twice, lost one playoff final, won another one. And it was a really fun kind of socializing thing to do. But then at uni, I'd managed to get my whole uni course football team to wear Yeovil kits because they were selling off for $5 a shirt the last season's kit. And I was like, we need a kit, we'll have that. And the club shop, because it's a small enough club, like responded directly and said, like, we'll get them to you quickly because you need them for this. And that was all good fun. But we got to the championship, and there was a game on Easter Monday in 2014. And we were in quite a relegation scrap, and it's the day after the Chinese Grand Prix. And I'd gone over to Paris before the race for Daniel Ricciardo's exclusion hearing. So he got excluded from the Australian Grand Prix that year for fuel flow limits, and the FIA were listening to the appeal. So I went over and covered that, flew from there to China, did the race weekend. Sunday night left, flew back overnight to Paris, got a train into the centre of Paris, got the Eurostar back to London, got the tube across to Waterloo, got a train down to Yeovil, got picked up by my dad and my cousin, and he took us to the ground. We got to the ground about an hour before kickoff. And I was like so jet lagged, but I was like, wow, all that effort to get there, watch the game. And we lost 2-1 with like an injury time goal. It went in at the far end, and I stood behind the other goal, and I saw the ball hit the net, and I realised at that moment that it was probably the goal that relegated us. And it hadn't even crossed my mind until it went in. Like, it wasn't like I was worried that if they score, this will happen. But when it went in, I suddenly thought, I remembered the halftime scores from other results. I was like, oh no.
Yeah.
And the official site actually got me to write a whole piece on it because of the effort I'd gone to get there. Yeah. And then obviously the fact that it basically sent us down. So we had 2 games left. I think we went down the next week officially, but we're as good as down there. And then, but yeah, you don't lose it with your local club. So
true dedication.
Yeah, still a big fan. Haven't been to many games recently. Like travel does get in the way, and when we do get big enough to be on TV, it seems to be a race weekend, and it clashes with.
Yeah.
I was in Saudi Arabia doing TV interviews for NBC, as you mentioned, I worked for before, and qualifying was late in Saudi Arabia, being a night race. But the FA Cup game we had against Bournemouth, Stevenage maybe, was on TV, but it was moved late as well. Because it was on TV. So it went from being before qualifying when I could have watched it to during qualifying. So I was there like trying to half stream it on my phone while interviewing drivers, and I had to give it up in the end. So it's always difficult to follow a small team from afar. Not as easy as following United.
Following teams from afar, and this will be the last thing we'll touch on. American sports, the other side of the Atlantic. From having a look, you seem to be quite a big American sports fan. I believe the Warriors in basketball, the Cubs, is it in baseball? Now, I haven't been able to pinpoint an NFL team yet, but I did see you were at MetLife. Are you a Giants fan, or what? Have you picked a team yet?
No, so MetLife was when I went again with Nate from the GIF. We went before the US Grand Prix a couple of years ago, and we had some meetings with actually Danny Ricciardo's agent in New York, and then we went just because Jets were playing the Patriots, and it was a chance to see Brady, so we went to that game. But no, you won't be able to quite see it. But at the top of this tower of hats that's behind me, it's a Panthers hat. So I'm a Carolina Panthers fan.
Wow.
I don't make it easy for myself. So the teams I support, there's only two that are technically in the same city. So I've got the Cubs from baseball and the Blackhawks from NHL. But even then, I'm loose with the Blackhawks. I've been to a game, but I'm not fully investing hockey yet. I just hop around and watch hockey when it's fun. But yeah, football was from 2014. I went to USGP and stayed with a photographer called Jamie Price, who's a good friend of mine, and he lives in Charlotte and he's a big Panthers fan. Yeah. So he took a group of us to a game and I was hooked then. And what helped is the following year, we made the playoffs. The year after that, we made the Super Bowl and probably should have won it, but got beat by the Broncos. But then you're hooked. And again, even though it's gone to pot since, you can't sort of change allegiance. And then, the Warriors was just, I was not really a fan of any team. And I was in San Francisco between races in Austin and Mexico, or Mexico and Brazil. This tends to be how my sporting kind of allegiances happen through traveling. And and I was just there, and I watched a lot of games on TV while in the city, and the whole of the city was really behind the Warriors at the time. It's just they were starting their success, and Steph Curry's just so good. And it got me hooked, and then they started winning lots of things, which made it easier to follow them. I enjoyed that, and I've been to a couple of games as well, home and away. Haven't seen Steph yet because I went to the Rockets against the Warriors after USGP 3 years ago, and he just got injured and broken his hand, so he didn't play. And then I went that Christmas time for meetings, and got to go to Oracle Arena for a home game for the first time. And again, he was still out injured, so I haven't seen him live. So I've got to sort that. But the best story is the Cubs, actually, if people haven't switched off already, because I'm just talking American sports. But with the Cubs, it was, so the year I went to San Francisco, I was choosing between San Francisco or Chicago to spend 5-6 days in the gap between races. So I'd flown out to the US, done US, Mexico. The next race was in Brazil, but not for 2 weeks. And at the time I was like, well, I'm going to try and see a bit of the world. I can work from this part of the world, working for Racer. I was on the right time zone. And it's better than flying all the way home to fly out again. So I chose to go to San Francisco because Chicago was insanely expensive. And it turned out that was because the Cubs were in the playoffs, but they didn't get too far. And then the following year, I was like, well, I've done San Francisco, so I'm going to go to Chicago now. And in the week before, as it was building up, so I'm just getting attacked by the dog here as well. In the week before, as the build up to the game, or to my trip, I noticed that the Cubs had made it to the World Series. So I was like, this is going to be epic. I'm going to be in Chicago for the World Series. And then they went 3-1 down against the Cleveland Indians. Yeah. And I was like, it's going to be over before I even get there. So I was so invested for the race weekend in Mexico, watching these games, being like, please just keep it alive. And it was, they won to make it 3-2. I think it was on the Sunday night, or maybe on the Saturday night. And that meant, it was still going to be a game 6 at least, which is when I would be in Chicago. So both game 6 and game 7 were in Cleveland, but I landed, and just through a quirky twist, my flatmate at the time, a guy called Tom Hamilton, who works for ESPN as well, he's a really good journalist on covering all sports, but mainly rugby. He was in Chicago too, covering Ireland playing the All Blacks, of all things. So they had a test there at Autumn International at Bears Stadium, and he was there interviewing I think Ron Gatland was there as well, so he was interviewing him while he was there and doing this great coverage with the All Blacks. So he was already in an Irish bar with a load of other rugby journalists. When I landed, and I went straight to my hotel, dropped my bag, legged it to this Irish pub, and got in. And I walked in, and it was rammed. So I suddenly got the kind of how much people were invested in the baseball team. And I walked in, and a guy called Addison Russell hit a grand slam. I remember hearing the term on the telly as soon as I'd walked in. Bases are loaded. And I still was like a rookie in terms of knowledge of baseball at this point. So I was like, what does that mean? And looked up and just watched Addison Russell hit this grand slam, and the place erupted. It was like a last minute winner for England in the World Cup final sort of thing. Beer went everywhere, and I was like, what have I walked into? This is incredible. So they won that game. It went to a game 7, and we were like, right, we've got to get somewhere to watch it. We booked the pub, which wasn't actually that lively, and it was all a bit nervy. So we ended up going to another Irish bar of all things nearby that we managed to cram into and watch them win. And car horns were blaring. The whole city was going crazy. So that just properly swept me up in it, and I was hooked from that moment on. So even though also a team that's gone downhill, whenever I start following a team, clearly it all goes wrong. But yeah, that got me massively hooked. And it's tough to follow from afar, but I mean, the internet, Twitter, apps, you can keep an eye on things. And it's my escape from work, because I love all sport, as people probably worked out by now. And that is my escape from working in a sport where you can't just sit back and enjoy it for what it is anymore. I can do that with all the other sports. So that's why I'm so invested in so many.
Yeah, well, you'll always get a lot of fun in an Irish bar, and if you're ever in Ireland, give me a shout, and we'll go have a pint at some time. Quickly, prediction for the Super Bowl this Sunday.
I am gonna go for Bengals. I just think Joe Burrow is an absolute gangster, really, isn't he? I love his style. I think he's so cool. I mean, Matthew Stafford's clearly good, and it's a nice redemption story for him. But I just, the way that Burrow has turned that franchise around, really, and I don't think anyone expected that run all the way to the Super Bowl. So I'm gonna back him to get it done. I think he's got something special, which it'll be cool. Looking forward to watching it. I've got a group of us from F1 actually are all running a half marathon at Goodwood on Sunday morning. And then we're going to the pub, and then we're going to bunker down and watch the Super Bowl. So excellent. That's going to be a fun evening as well. So hopefully no F1 teams are going to break into massive stories on Monday morning, because we're going to be slow to that.
Yeah. Well, listen, Chris, thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it. It's been an excellent conversation. Your career has been fantastic. Your love for sports is clear. And I'm pretty sure people will have got a good sense of you and what you're all about. So thank you so much for your time, and thanks for coming on.
Not a problem. Thank you very much for having me and for humouring me rambling on about American sports and things. But it's been a lot of fun. Really enjoyed it.
Listen, folks, thanks very much, and I'll see you all in the next episode of the Mick podcast. Cheers.